is. So you ready to go live? I don't think I've ever seen myself be able to answer yes. never, I'm never quite ready when I do hit the button. But
Ooh.
it says we're live now. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us again on this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. My name is Frank Johnson. I am the host of the Range Report on YouTube and co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation with my illustrious partner, Michael Marshall, who's directly to my side. And right below us is the Dragon of the Southern Tier, New York's only true independent journalist, Michael Vasquez. And we represent common sense, decency, and morality. And we have a bridge in Brooklyn that we'd like to put up for sale and to see if there's any takers. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Yeah, it's been a dreary week in terms of weather and politics.
Yeah. There's a lot of shit going on.
It all came together at the end of the week. All of it really bunched itself up in the last couple of days.
Well, everything just hit a roadblock because when you have a certain number of votes that need to be met and things don't happen, everything is going to hit that wall all at the same time. Now, the question that I've been trying to figure out in my head is Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz? Why?
What was that?
Why?
This whole debacle of the Speaker of the House, stuff like that. All right. From my standpoint, McCarthy seemed like he started moving the ball forward in certain directions. But again, this is somebody that made a bunch of promises to begin with that was either slow walking the results or just not coming through at all. I mean, there's that little bit of progress that we see, but not in the multitudes that we should be seeing it. So Gaetz calls him on the carpet. There's enough votes to get rid of him, but there's not enough votes for anybody to replace him.
Well, that's my big deal. Okay. This is giving GOP a huge black eye.
Kind of. Let's think about that for a second. This is all about the marketing of it, which is what the news media is doing. This is marketing for the Democrats, because McCarthy, you heard everyone screaming about it took 3 votes. Look, he's gotten through, Jim Jordan has gone through 3 votes and the Republicans are lost. They don't know what's going on. McCarthy went through 15 votes. Okay. So within this year, in terms of comparison, this isn't that bad. There have been other speakers who have gone through, there have been multiple votes, and speakers have gone through 2 or 3 or 4 rounds before someone is selected. It's happened more than 15 times, and most of the times in recent memory. This isn't that unusual. This isn't some kind of breakdown, but if you look at the major mainstream news media, all you're hearing from them is, this means it's all collapsing. No, it's not.
Okay. Here's why I say that this gave the GOP a huge black eye. Regardless of how many votes it took to put McCarthy in, even if this turned around and say they were able to get somebody within 5 votes, the fact that they did not have this organized ahead of time when they ousted McCarthy just goes to show that they were planning to put this into chaos. Okay. They should have waited.
I disagree with you, Mike. I think
on this.
I disagree with you because
this just gave ammo to the Democrats to literally browbeat Republicans. And the big issue on this all isn't so much the people that are true Republicans or the people that are true Democrats. It's the ones that are in the middle, which is the majority of America, that are seeing this, and they are hearing this as this chaos. Latest reports show that Number one, the temporary House Speaker is threatening to quit. And number two, right now, because of this deal with Jordan, about basically not getting elected after 3 votes, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 new candidates that are throwing their hat in the ring for House Speaker.
Of course, but that's not unusual. That there's multiple people who want it, especially
But
since
the fact that this isn't a new House session, that this is a House where that was already in session, a House that has many pressing matters that they need to deal with, and they do this all in the middle of it.
Okay, so here's where I disagree with parts of what you were saying, Mike. I don't think Matt Gaetz had the plan to remove McCarthy. I think he had the plan to stage a vote, as was part of the deal that McCarthy made on the 15th vote, to get him in as speaker, to make a point, to show that he had failed in many of the promises he had made and that there was not enough movement forward. And unwittingly, Matt Gaetz hit the right moment where everyone, or more than enough Republicans, were pissed off and wanted to jump on the bandwagon. I don't think he knew that was going to happen. I think it did happen. And because no one was expecting it, no one was in the wings saying, okay, and I'm going to step up. I mean, Jim Jordan, this isn't the first time that people have talked about him being speaker. And up until this time, he has consistently said, I don't want to be speaker. That's not my goal. But because no one else was stepping up after Steve Scalise couldn't do it, possibly because of health reasons, that's one of the rumors out there, possibly because he never wanted it, that we then saw Jordan step up and say, well, no one's taking the reins. We need to move forward because we have a 45-day stay on shutting down the government. We need to move this forward. By the way, we are now under 30 days to get the government funded, or else it shuts down. So this is important, and that's only one of several issues. So now we have the point that, and this is unusual for America because it's the first time it's happened to us, but this is actually commonplace around the world. Look at every parliamentary system out there. It was a vote of confidence. That's what happened to McCarthy. He had a vote of confidence against him, and there was no confidence in him. Therefore, he was removed. Now, in parliamentary systems, you reform the government, you get a new coalition. They've been through this dozens upon hundreds of times. They're used to it. It's the first time it's happened in America. It won't be the last time it happens in America. And so now we're trying to figure out that process under the gun because the world didn't stop to let us figure it out. And so I think they'll think this through in the future, saying, okay, next time we're going to have a vote of no confidence, we better have someone ready. But it's the negatives here really are being compounded by the news media and their negative take. And we know the news media is 82% left-leaning. They want Republicans to look bad. They want this. There's just as much chaos in the Democratic Party. We've got RFK going independent. We've got Cenk Uygur, who decides that he suddenly is going to be a candidate for president, which is ridiculous. We've got all of the different factions of the progressives running out there and saying that they support Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization that unilaterally decided that it wanted to go out and kill over 1,500 innocent civilians and capture hundreds of hostages using them as human shields, including 164 Americans. This is, Democrats are just as screwed up. They're just as chaotic. It's just that the news media are left-leaning and want to protect them because they're doing what they did in 2020, fortifying the election. That's what they told us. Newsweek came out after the election. What did they do? News media and social media came together to fortify the election so that Biden would win.
Yeah, and we've
seen the same thing now.
Okay. In fact, we showed the article from Time Magazine that literally said that that's exactly what they did. But that's the whole issue, is they are literally, with this action, they are literally putting this in a situation that they didn't need to be in. Honestly. Okay. First off, it looks extremely bad because this is the first time the Speaker of the House has ever been removed. Okay. In the middle of a session.
Yeah.
So that doesn't look good, regardless of whether it's voted no confidence or what. That doesn't look good. And with the fact that it is a GOP speaker that was in there, regardless of whether he's a Rhino or not, it doesn't look good when you're looking at this from middle of the road America.
Well, my point is that middle of the road America only knows what the news media tells them. In fact, that's why YouTube has now taken the process to kill content creators like you and me that make political commentary, that deal with the politics. They are now censoring us and suppressing us by putting in $1.6 million to promote shorts from the mainstream media that they're going to put in a link and push all of the public into approved mainstream media outlets for the news content to suppress any voice that would ask a question like we are right now, to even have this conversation, because people need to think about this more than, well, Matt Gaetz was just a evil bad guy and wanted to crush America. No, that has nothing to do with what he has historically said and what his voting record has been about. That isn't what the Republicans are doing, but that is how it's being framed. There's a big difference, and people need to wake up. There's a big difference between how something is being framed to sell you on it in a minute and a half, and if you spend 15 minutes actually paying attention, you'll get a very different story.
Now, did you see this? This kind of relates to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Supreme Court lifted the ban that was stopping Biden officials from contacting tech platforms to, quote unquote, stop, quote unquote, misinformation.
So in other words, it's perfectly fine for the White House to collude with social media companies to suppress the voices of American people who have the First Amendment that allows us unlimited criticism of our elected officials, rightly or wrongly.
Now, this doesn't mean that the case is not ongoing, because it's still an active case. It just means that the injunction against the White House contacting tech platforms has been lifted. So that we do have to keep in mind that this is still a valid case that is still going to be heard before the Supreme Court. But until it is heard by the Supreme Court and a ruling is made, the White House can continue business as usual with these tech platforms.
And how much damage can they do in that time?
Oh, huge amount of damage. That's one of the reasons why I don't agree with this. And one of the biggest reasons why I don't agree with this is there is a question of constitutionality being raised here.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever there is a question of constitutionality being raised, an injunction should automatically be put in place
on the side of the Constitution,
limit the harm done by potentially unconstitutional laws.
Yeah, they should have an injunction to protect the rights until there is justification, clear justification that something is not violating those rights.
Right. I always think that we should err on the side of the citizens versus erring on the side of government. And the lifting of this injunction actually errs on the side of government. And I don't think that is the way it should be done.
I don't see a
I,
positive reason why you would go the other way. If the question is, gee, they're silencing, even if they're silencing one person, they're
Mhm.
silencing someone's free speech that is guaranteed, absolutely, and that's a good thing. Why would we
Right.
ever want our government to do that?
No, there isn't. Okay, there is no reason, regardless of whether it's quote unquote misinformation, disinformation, or whatever else you want to call it. Every voice has a right to be heard. Okay, and if people want to go out there and spread half truths, outright falsehoods, etc., that is their right. That is their prerogative. But they also are open to be held accountable for whatever they say. Okay. And if they lead a bunch of people on with misinformation and a bunch of people act according to that misinformation, and there is damages that result from that, whoever's responsible for spreading that misinformation should be held accountable.
That,
Um,
yeah,
okay.
I got a problem
And
with that.
What?
what?
If I say something and I say something enough, I say the earth is flat, and I
Mhm,
get a million people finally convinced that the earth is flat.
mhm.
And to prove it, they all decide that they're going to go out and jump into the ocean and swim until they find the end of it, and they all drown.
Right?
And somebody wants to hold me accountable because I started the whole thing saying that the earth is flat.
You're not accountable for that.
Well, I don't, there's a certain part that's of me that says, regardless of what information you spread, you're not responsible for somebody else's behavior.
Well,
If they take that information from me and they don't do any research on their own, they don't form an opinion of their own, or they don't look for any other information, and they take whatever false information I give and they run with it, and of their own free will and volition, they do something that causes themselves or somebody else harm, am I responsible for their act?
classically, the answer has been if you are making a call to violence, a call to action that would cause or incite or reasonably infer and logically connect to violence, then yes, you have incited it. You are responsible.
Right. But
But if
they're looking,
someone on their own takes
but they
information and does something stupid, that's on them.
but they're going beyond that with this, with what they're trying to do. And this is why we got to be very, very careful with how we look about trying to control what people say, or trying to, have some sort of admonishment for what people say, because they're going beyond the point of your words cause somebody to do harm. Because if my words caused a bunch of people to go, plow a field of hay, yeah, they harmed the hay, but they planted vegetables in the process. It's different, because anything that you say can be said is harmful for somebody else. What they're doing is they're equating this based in political speech, and they're equating the harm as to voting against their will, voting against their agenda. The harm they're going to say is, you cause people to vote for a candidate we don't like. That harms our process. You need to be held accountable for it. And that's part of the problem, is that we have this, when you have the arbiter of right and wrong being some government agency, how many conspiracy theories were said were harming people? People were getting the wrong information. They were dying. They were this, they were that. And how many of those conspiracy theories turned out to be absolutely true? And people lost livelihoods. They lost jobs. They lost everything they had because they were ahead of the curve. We have to be very
Which,
careful when we talk about,
which
looking.
is why when we have both criminal and civil trials, they are supposed to be held by a jury of our peers. They aren't supposed to be handled by administrative agencies.
Right. It's just that I just find problems with the whole, writing laws, letting them sit on the books and everything that carry penalties for people. And again, how much harm is being done before these things are adjudicated into
Exactly.
whether they're constitutional or
And
not.
that was my point to begin with.
Right.
Okay.
And listen, I'm not trying to make bones for the government here. But when it comes to speech, I don't think the courts should be involved with it.
And they absolutely should be. Okay. But it shouldn't be the courts making the decision. It should be the juries.
Well, insofar as
the Constitution needs to make the decision as far as speech and as far as what people say.
Wait a minute. Here's the thing. I think
Okay.
we're both saying something similar. And what I think is, the only time that this should be free speech should be an issue is if there is a case where there is violence that is the direct result. I mean, violence, not someone's feelings, not how an election goes, violence, pure and simple, absolute, that there was violence that took place. And then in that investigation, you can go to the court and say, okay, do my peers see a logical, absolute progression, a call to action that actually created this situation? If there is no evidence of that, then it didn't happen. It's free speech. Leave everyone alone. And that's the only time that the government, as an agency, the judicial system, should ever touch this. I don't care if it's misinformation. Buyer beware. It's your job as a citizen to be informed. It is on you to double check the source and to make a decision based on your knowledge of government and the world and all the information that's available to you. It is not for the government to make that decision on an individual basis and micromanage your life.
Okay, let me go through this.
But I was just saying, but to the flip, you have the court saying, we're upset that they left, that they took this thing away. We're now letting the Biden administration talk to social media again.
And I disagree with that.
Well, we see that's the thing. I don't like it. I don't like that the government can go in and buy space and do ad time and try to do this. I think if the government wants to buy propaganda on social media, let them buy propaganda on social media. It's the citizens' responsibility, like you said, to find out if they're being hogwashed or not. Now, what I have a problem with is the government telling social media to curtail the free speech of other people. But I don't want the courts telling the government that their speech needs to be monitored and policed as well.
No, I think they should, because the government isn't a person. It's not a citizen. It is an organization. It is just a function.
But here's the thing. They're talking about an administration.
Right.
They're talking about an administration. Administrations change.
Yeah.
They change all the time. They go from left to right to right to left and upside down and backward and forth and everything else. Biden or whomever is in charge has just as much right to get their message out as anybody else would. Now, if it's a different story, if they're using government monies, if they're using federal tax dollars to buy this space, then I have a problem with it, because they're using our resources against us. If the Biden administration has a message that they want to address on social media and they want to buy their own ad times using campaign funds, I don't have a problem with that, because it's not my money being used, not your money being used, it's their money being used. I just don't want to see the government to a point where they have the courts be able to tell anybody that their speech is not going to be permitted.
I know, Mike, you want to say something here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to for the last 20 minutes.
I know. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's go to the analogy that was used in a Supreme Court case. that they always try to use, especially against the Second Amendment, where they try to say no right is absolute. And I've had this discussion on this show before. Every right is absolute. Okay. Free speech is not limited. The right to keep and bear arms is not limited. Even though the government would like to try to tell you that it is, it's not. Okay. When the Supreme Court did hand down that ruling where it said that you can't go into a crowded theater and yell fire, well, you can go into a crowded theater and yell fire. But if you're yelling fire caused the people in that theater to panic and they are injured, then you are culpable for those injuries. Just like if you say the world is flat and everybody panics and wants to see the edge of the world, I'm sorry, you are culpable. Mm-hmm. Okay, regardless of whether they did their own research or not. If you were compelling enough to make them to believe that, okay, I also agree that this climate crisis hysteria that's going on is the same thing. Okay, and when it is finally realized that this is natural processes the earth goes through, then people that have been orchestrating this climate change fiasco for dollars and actually causing harm to people, I think they need to be held accountable for that.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I think there's a my fine distinction. Let me say it this way. My fine distinction is government is not a citizen, nor does it have the rights of a citizen. It has restrictions, both under the Constitution and in general. It has different prerequisites, and it shouldn't be treated the same. Yes, Joe Biden can go out and as an individual, TikTok, Twitter, whatever the hell he wants to get on and say whatever he wants as an individual. If he's using the office of the presidency to make a statement, there are restrictions on what he can say and how he does that process. If he wants to use his private money or money donated to him to run for a campaign, fantastic. If he's using taxpayer funding, there is a difference. The federal government has no place telling anyone, private business or otherwise, what they can and cannot say. And yes, I agree with you, Mike. If someone has done something that has caused harm, that you can provably say there was harm, then that person should be held accountable, because yelling fire isn't the problem. That isn't the crime. You're just not protected from the consequence because
it's the creation
it's a false statement. And that's the key to the argument there. You can't yell. Oh, news media, everyone likes to abridge it to you can't yell and fire in a theater. That's the abridgment. It continues to say what you will not be protected by saying that. You can't say it's free speech because your consequences are still applicable. You were wrong. You lied. You knowingly, falsely said something that caused harm to the public, and you will be held accountable to that. You're not protected by saying it was free speech. I could say whatever I want. And that's the difference. And I think that's where people are missing that in these conversations about what the government is doing.
I want to, as we know, terminology is everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And often we say the Constitution restricts our government.
Yes. That's the intent.
Actually, if we really look at the Constitution as a whole, the only restrictive part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. Everything else in the Constitution is permissive.
I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I mean, when we're talking about the separation of powers, when we're talking about the funding of government, who allocates the monies to where, its application, the limits of
Does
executive
the
orders.
Constitution give powers or does it take powers away?
It restricts the usage of powers. It doesn't
Does
give
the
or take.
Constitution give power or does it take it away?
Neither. It restricts use of
No,
power.
it doesn't. Show me one article, one clause,
Okay, so when
not an amendment. Show me
in my
one
understand,
clause
I understand.
that restricts a power.
As I understand, when the United States government, the only authorization for spending of money comes through the House. The president can't do that. That is a restriction. It's not that the government can't spend
No,
money.
it is a permission to the House.
It is a
It
restriction.
is not a restriction.
It is. It's a restriction from the other branches.
It is a grant of power to specifically to the House of Representatives.
I see. Maybe we're looking at the words differently because I see
It
that
is a
as a
granting
restriction
of power.
against. It is a restriction of power.
No, it's not. Where does it say that the president is restricted?
The president cannot allocate.
Where
funding.
does it say the president is restricted?
The Congress, when it says that the Congress
Where
is
does
the only
it
one
say
to
the
allocate
president
funding,
specifically say the president is restricted?
when it says that the House,
Where does it say
that's what I.
specifically?
If
The
you're saying
president
there's a different
cannot-
saying, are you saying that it doesn't say that?
It doesn't say that.
Then the president can go and spend all the money he wants.
No,
Okay, so he's
because it
restricted.
grants specific authority to Congress. It doesn't grant to the president.
So
It
he's
grants
restricted.
to the Congress. No, that's where you're getting it wrong. And that's why our Constitution is upside down. Is because people think that the Constitution is restrictive document when it's a permissive document. And only what it says is permitted is what is allowed. If we set it up as a restrictive document, then we have to set restrictions on everything. And we can't do that. If we look at the Constitution as a permissive document and look at only what is permitted for Congress or the government to do, then it changes everything.
Okay. I need to think about that far more than we have time for at this moment. I hear what you're saying. I need to think it through on my side. I don't know about Frank.
Well, this is like the 18th time you two of you have gone back and forth on this exact same issue. So at some point, you guys figure it the hell out off this camera so that we can get other things during the fucking show, please.
Okay, fine, whatever. That being said, let's move forward. Moving forward. In terms of, so Biden is now getting his chance just in time for the 2024 election to again label American citizens and organizations as disinformation, misinformation, basically censor this guy, censor that guy or that gal, suppress these people, don't let them speak. At the same time that we are seeing just this week, YouTube has come out and said, we're going to suppress anyone except the approved mainstream media sources. So again, to corral the voice and to corral the message. And we're seeing these things come together. And I'll give a great example of how this is absolutely damaging to the American people. It is devastating. Let me share with everyone. Okay, I don't have it up right this second. Give me 2 seconds. I just need to bring this up. You may hear some background noise. Bear with me for a second. I apologize. Nope, wrong one. Nope.
Tall and tan and
Yeah, I know.
the girl from Mean Bean goes walking in. When she does, everyone says, ah.
You know, I thought I had everything set up for the screen and all, and no, I have too many screens and too many windows up. So I think everyone can see this, right? You guys see this? Okay. So what this is about is Congressman Mark Molinaro came out and explained his vote about the speaker. Since Jim Jordan was up, he has voted twice in favor of Jim Jordan being Speaker of the House. Up till 4 days ago, October 16th, as is noted here in the video and also in the sources, he was completely in support of Jim Jordan as being Speaker. Today, he now took a new position and said, nope, I do not support him because suddenly Jim Jordan isn't a unifying voice. Don't know where that changed. Don't know how that changed from 4 days ago to today. Don't know how that changed. He doesn't explain it. But what he does explain, which is in the video, and let me see if I can pull that screenshot for you real quick, which is, he is quoted here. Where do I have it? Oh, there it is. So I think you can see this screenshot now. Yeah. He is quoted by Fox News. He has stated publicly that there is coercion, there is literally threats of violence that have been going on and surrounding or involved with the vote on the Speaker of the House. No one in the news media, including this very article from Fox News, deals with this. He literally is quoted as saying that there are threats of violence. He's not clear. Did he get threatened? Did someone else get threatened? Who made the threat? What was the threat about? Was it a vote for or against? Did it come from a Democrat or Republican? He doesn't make it clear. He's just saying there are threats of violence that are involved in this vote. This is absolutely critical for the American people, and the mainstream news media glossed this over and just passed it by, not even thinking about it. Not one news agency has brought this up to the American people, and this is insurrection. This is not only coercion, it's insurrection, that people are using force and the threat of force to change the way our government is operating. How the hell can, and that's because news media is not going to talk about it. YouTube and all the social media are going to suppress this. Monday morning, they're going to go on to a new story. But we have a member of Congress, cowardly. He doesn't mention who. He doesn't mention how this is happening or why this is happening. He just said it happened. So he's a bit cowardly in not admitting or letting people know what's happening here that is breaking our government. And the news media is happy to suppress this. The social media is happy to suppress this. And people are going to go about their day and not realize that if this is true, if this is absolutely true, if it wasn't just Mark Molinaro trying to give himself cover for changing his vote, apparently for no reason, just because the wind blew in a new direction, if he isn't just making this up, if it isn't hyperbole, then this means we are in absolute agony in our nation. Go ahead.
There has actually been a few sources that have talked about that. That there have been death threats and other threats related to the speaker vote. And Axios covered it. Okay. House conservatives dismiss death threats as hardliners dig in. One House conservatives pushing back against concerns over death threats made to Republican lawmakers who have opposed Speaker nominee Jim Jordan, calling it a red herring.
Which could be Mark Molinaro saying it again. As far as I'm aware, he's the only one who's gone on record saying this. As far as I'm aware, I maybe I missed it because, again, this has been suppressed, but they're not naming their sources, nor has anyone said this person did it.
ABC covered it. Republicans who voted against Jim Jordan for Speaker say they've been threatened and harassed. Several House Republicans who have voted against Jim Jordan for Speaker are seething after threats have been made against them, their offices, or even their spouses, including one that the lawmaker called a credible death threat.
I think that's different. That's a different. That's the public reacting to this. We're talking about within Congress. Molinaro was talking about in the hall.
Several House Republicans are seething after death threats, after threats have been made against them.
Yeah, but in going further, go on.
Well, Molinaro is claiming that the threats are coming from within the
They
House.
can provide ABC News. Okay. Oh, you're saying that other Republicans are threatening?
That's the way I am reading, the way the quote has been made, the way it is stated under Fox News that and I reached out to Representative Mark Molinaro on Twitter asking him about this. He's refused to respond. He did initially respond to me, but will not follow up and make clarification, because I asked for a clarification of this quote, because as I read it, based on the way he stated it, the way it's been quoted, he's talking about inside our Congress, not people outside reacting to it, but members of Congress threatening each other using force to coerce a vote.
And that's actually nothing new.
Well, Dianne Feinstein's dead 3 weeks now, so we know it's not her.
Yeah.
Okay, but
because she had a history of using threats against the members
of Congress, threatening each other with violence and other things. That's nothing new.
Well, it's not new that people have said, as an example, in June 27th, Move On went out had a dinner with all of the Senate Democrats and told them that if they didn't continue to support Joe Biden for the 2024 election, they would receive zero funding towards their reelection campaigns. Okay, that's funding. See, that's a different thing. That I understand. See, people could say, well, that's a threat. No, it's not. That's about an election, and you're not required to give someone funding for their election. Fantastic. You can take that away. You can make that threat of, I won't continue to support you, because that's not a guarantee. There's a difference when you're saying that members of Congress are threatening each other with violence unless someone does X, Y, or Z. That's coercion, and that is insurrection. And if I am wrong about this, I'm waiting for Molinaro won't clarify this, which makes me think I'm right, because he won't. It's a real simple thing to say, Mike, no, you got the context wrong. Let me clarify. He won't clarify his words, which means to me, I'm right.
I don't know. I kind of think I'd like to see a little bit of a throwdown on Capitol Hill.
Okay. May 22nd, 1856. Senator Charles Sumner was caned until he's unconscious, knocked unconscious.
Wow.
Okay. And his crime against Kansas speech. Sumner identified 2 Democratic senators as principal culprits in this crime. Yeah. Stephen Douglas and Andrew Butler of South Carolina.
Yeah, that's over 150 years ago. I'm talking about the modern era.
There is a history of this. Okay. During civil rights, there was threats coming from the opposing side against other members of Congress. This is nothing new. Okay, we aren't used to it because, it hasn't happened since the 60s, maybe early 70s, that we know of, or that's gotten out. But I would almost guarantee that it does happen.
Well, according to my sources, and I know multiple members of Congress for decades now, not once any member of Congress or any of their aides or anyone that I'm in contact with in either party, I have contacts on both sides, not one has ever mentioned this to me. This is new to me. This is a new development.
Eh, I'm I'm kind of the mind where you can only work with so many people so long before you wind up yelling at somebody, that you're going to crack them in the mouth. Yeah, I think it's going to happen. Listen, let's not fool ourselves into thinking that these are some sort of morally superior individuals that don't have egos.
Of course they do.
And
I am certain.
let's
I
not
am certain that more than one person threatened to pop Newt Gingrich right in the mouth more than once or twice. I'm sure somebody wanted to knock Ted Kennedy on his ass a couple of times
I
and
know that
verbalize.
happens.
and let's remember Chuck Schumer. You will rue the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen,
No.
listen.
This is-
These people are not any different than anybody else, other than the fact that they wound up running and winning an election.
I
And
know.
in most cases, 95% of the people that we have on Capitol Hill are the dregs of our society. They are the lowest of the low. These people don't give them any sort of credence that they seem to be above threatening somebody. I
I'm
am
not.
certain.
Oh, I
Well, I am
guarantee you they
certain
threaten
there has
people
been-
because
I am certain there's been more than
Here's
a
the thing.
couple of fist fights in the house gym.
Of course there
it's all
has.
about power for them.
Of course there has. But there is a difference. And there's the normal operation of back doors, back room arguments, fights, blah blah. That stuff always happens. It always has. It's government. It's politics. These things happen. We're talking about 437 huge egos because they all have egos. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in Congress. No one goes into politics without an ego. That's a fact. So yeah, these things, people erupt. They have their problems. They have their fights and all that. That happens. But that he is bringing up this, I believe this takes on a different magnitude and different order. And again, based on the way he has said it, it
Or-
sounds like that this is something not the norm, that this was above and beyond the pale in a magnitude, in a degree, in a manner that troubles me,
Or-
especially when he will not respond to it.
Or somebody pushed the right button to make him change his vote by making a promise to him that he's too embarrassed to say what the promise was. So he uses the thin veil of threats as his cover and then refuses to identify where the threats come from, other than, oh, it was a threat. We've been being threatened.
And
They're all
that
cowards.
and actually in the video I do address that, and that means he's slandering and or libeling, and this is something that again he should be held accountable for.
Again, but he's not naming a name. So he gives himself an out by not naming a name. He can go about this, and by tomorrow, nobody gives a shit of what he had to say. So he sells his vote out like the other schmuck that went over there and was caught, 2 hours after the vote. He's over at the White House bowling. He's
I don't
over
remember
at the
that.
White. Yeah, just today they had the last vote. I forgot one of the representatives from Florida that turned around on his vote. Where did they find him a couple hours after the vote? In the Nixon bowling alley at the White House. Probably getting his palm greased over there. Well, dude. This is all a game. We're not allowed to play. It's a show we're forced to watch. This is just a dog and pony show. This is all it is. It's all it is. Look, Gates made a tactical decision to try and oust what's his face over there. His plan probably worked a little too well. If anything good comes out of this, anything good at all, it shows up who the 20 or 22 Republicans that need to be primaried out of office are. Because if this happened on the other side and they ousted Pelosi and wanted to put somebody else on the Democrat side in there, they would have unity. They would have unity. Either one, they would have never ousted. They would never have ousted Pelosi in the first place. You would have just had one one vote from one member of the squad because that one that don't like her, and all the rest of them would have voted against removal. But even if they did remove her, they would have had something, because Democrats stick together no matter what the hell happens. They toe the same line. They lie the same lie. They wear the same shoes. It don't matter. Republicans at least have differing opinions on stuff. Some are more easily bought than the others are. If anything, this just showed which 20 or so Republicans were willing to say, let's let America twist in the wind until I get what I want. It shows you which ones can be bought. So that's the only good that's going to come out of this, as far as I can see right now.
There is a lot not being said here. There's a lot that has an impact. And I think it's very important for people to look at their member of Congress, to look at this more than just the headlines. And God help us, don't just stop with mainstream news media, because you are not getting the full story. You need to look at this much further. I think there's a lot happening just below the water that is becoming, that if we're paying attention to it, we can see it, and we have the ability voting these people out, which is one of the reasons why I want Molinaro to come forward. Either he's a liar, or a liar playing to try and make sure he gets reelected, or there's a serious problem. Either way, he should come forward, make it clear, so that people can take action properly. He's not helping anyone by playing this game of being, oh, see, I kind of said something. I almost said something. I almost did something. It serves no one. It's infuriating to me. This, I feel, is very infuriating. But
again, it's going to be another comment that goes by the wayside. Nobody's even going to care by next week.
I know. Yeah. By Monday, this is completely dead, and I'm the only one in the entire American
and honestly
political sphere talking about it.
It's already dead.
Well, I know. Like I said, I'm the only one talking about it. Fox News,
it's already
passed it.
And a related note, right now, the person serving as Speaker of the House, as temporary Speaker of the House, is Representative Patrick McHenry, who is the Speaker pro tempore. He is saying that his powers only extend to him being able to raise a vote for the Speaker of the House. He also is claiming that certain GOP Republicans are trying to get him to introduce other legislation to the House floor during this period of whatever we want to call it. And he is threatening to resign if that happens, or threatening to resign as Speaker pro tem. And I guess in a closed door meeting, it is claimed that he said, if you guys try to do that, he says that certain Republicans are trying to push him to try to move legislation on the floor without an explicit vote to expand his powers, according to multiple lawmakers that were in the room. Supposedly, McHenry said, if you guys try to do that, you'll figure out who the next person on Kevin's list is, McHenry told the room. Three sources said, referring to this former Speaker Kevin McCarthy's secret list of GOP lawmakers who would serve as temporary Speaker in the event of a vacancy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I guess that there was a formal resolution proposed by Representative David Joyce that would require a floor vote to empower McHenry to move legislation like spending bills and aid packages for Ukraine and Israel.
Well, that's another problem. The aid packages, but I'll get to that. We'll get to that. But we got to do something. We got to move forward. We're running out of time.
Okay.
whether it's McHenry as pro tem or someone else, we got to move things forward. We have a problem.
Well, we do. Okay. And the thing is Republicans are going to need to make a decision. And Democrats are still pushing for what's his name?
Hakeem
Jeffries.
Yeah, progressive. One of the leads of the progressive caucus in Congress.
Mm-hmm. And as a quote unquote bipartisan solution.
Ha! Yeah, okay.
Okay. Axios is reporting that there are currently 10 Republicans, GOP lawmakers, that are throwing their hat into the ring since McCarthy was removed, Scalise bowed out, and there's a conference voting to remove Jim Jordan as a nominee. These 10 names are House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, House Republican Vice Conference Chair Mike Johnson, Republican Study Committee Chair Kevin Hern, House Budget Chair Jody Arrington, House Small Business Chair Roger Williams, Reps Brian Donalds, Pete Sessions, Jack Bergman, Austin Scott, and Dan Mauser. Others argue that, multiple lawmakers say they believe Emmer has an early lead, but noted that knives are out from certain allies of former President Trump, along with reservations about elevating a current member of leadership. Others argue that Donald's support among conservatives in the House Freedom Caucus could give him an edge. Multiple GOP lawmakers have speculated it would take several candidates more failing before they're going to be able to reach a consensus.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess because no one on that list.
This is going to be a short-term deal.
Yeah, but none of those people will make the list. No one on there. Byron is the only one who makes some sense as a compromise. I don't see any of the others getting the kind of support they need. Well, and it appears
I think we need to go back to what we discussed last week. They need to take somebody that is not beholden to either the Democrats or the Republicans.
Yeah.
And somebody's outside.
Yeah.
All right. You convinced me. I'll put myself up for nomination.
I wish you would. Be more interesting.
Let me run for speaker. Because hey, listen, you listen, guys in Washington, you can't do better than this right here. Don't worry about me being bipartisan. I freaking hate all of you. I hate every single one of you. I don't have a problem calling any of you's names and calling you to the carpet. So if you want somebody
who's there, because I wouldn't put anything on the floor because they'd say it's unconstitutional.
No, they'd have a riot with me because all the progressives think I'm a racist because I'm black and conservative. How dare you do those two things at once?
So trying to keep this moving along.
Yeah.
So again, we've been lied to by the Biden administration, as we have multiple times. Okay, let me share this.
Okay, so do you mean the over 30,000 Americans that have been abandoned in foreign countries?
Now, I'm going to talk about the deficit.
Oh, because I was going to, go ahead, talk about the deficit. It plays into what's happening right now with Hamas humanitarian aid. Go for it.
Okay, so U.S. deficit was pegged at 1.7 trillion. But if we look at what the deficit was in 2022, it was at 1.37 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes the increase in the deficit look a lot smaller than what it actually was. What the Treasury Department did was they basically used an accounting mirage related to student loan forgiveness. that was struck down by the Supreme Court. And what they did was essentially add that onto the 2022 deficit and took it away from the 2023 deficit to make things look smaller.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at the numbers and so forth, in fact, when you factor out that student deficit altogether, the deficit actually jumped by $2 trillion from 2022 to 2023.
Not the first time they've been playing with the numbers.
$2 trillion from about $1 trillion in 2022.
Yeah, it's not the first time that they've played with the numbers to try. Again, they're trying to push Bidenomics as if it's been something successful, like they've actually controlled inflation, like the economy is actually doing well. They've been trying, they just keep playing with the numbers because you mention numbers, it's math. People lose their minds and just they turn into zombies going, ugh. And that's why they're doing this. So that so that people who are trying to follow it just lose their minds and go, it's math. I need to go and see what the Kardashians are doing. MILF Manor's on. That's why they do this.
Yeah. And I mean, they are manipulating it to try to make Bidenomics look so wonderful and how our economy is doing so great, except there are a lot of signs in our economy right now that are showing that consumer spending is slowing for the first time in over 12 years.
Well, no,
it's actually reversing. It's not slowing, it's reversing.
But it's not a surprise when we consider that if you go to the St. Louis Fed, according to their data directly, anyone can look this up, you'll see inflation is about 16% right now. Overall total inflation since February of 2021, inflation is up at least 16%. Food inflation is up 12%. According to a new metric, the aggregated inflation rate is actually 23.9% under the Biden-Harris administration. So depending on which source you want to go to, there is no source from the government or anyone else that can point to and show you that inflation is not double digits up. Not one source.
No.
But yet you are hearing from the Biden administration and Democrats on a regular basis and the news media overall, everything's great. Things are doing fantastic. You just don't understand. And yet there's not one data point anyone can point to and say, and here's the proof. Not one.
No. And honestly, America knows that Bidenomics isn't working. They fill it in their pocketbook every time they go to the grocery store, every time they go to the gas pump, every time they pay their fuel bill. Okay, for heating or whatever. They know that Bidenomics is not working. Okay, Biden can try to tout, unemployment's down, blah, 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 and all this other stuff, and how wages are increasing. No, they're not.
Unemployment's up. You notice how little information, how little we have seen the news media react to the fact that, because the answer was all the other data, throw it out the window because unemployment is down, and that's the proof you need. Well, unemployment, since they were saying that 2 months ago at 3.4%, is now 3.8%, steady and looking to rise. Oh, we're not talking about the unemployment rate anymore. They stopped talking about it. They keep moving the metrics to try and keep people confused. And every time the metrics turn negative, they switch to another metric, or they go through, as you just detailed, the way that they're playing with the math, which, by the way, if you tried to do that as a private citizen or as a business, the IRS would have you arrested for fraud. But, the U.S. government can do it. And it's all about trying to delude you long enough to get you through the next election. They just want you to be confused enough to get through that next election. That is the definition, I believe, of the Biden-Harris administration and many Democrats right now. They are just trying to get through the next election with as much power as they have right now. That's all they're trying to do. I think that's an accurate answer, especially when we start considering, I mean, look at what's happening overseas. Let's talk about, spending money that we're wasting, money that we really need to think about and reallocate. We're looking at right now, we gave $6 billion to Iran, which helped Iran fund Hamas, providing Hamas with over 8.
And
yeah,
Biden wants to give them another, what was it, 1.3 billion dollars, I think it is.
You're talking about Iran, but they want to give Hamas $105 million. $105 million to Hamas. They are going to give the very same people. They gave $300 million to them. They bought 8,000 rockets from Iran to attack civilians and killed over 1,500 civilians, over 30 Americans, and captured, using hostage as human shields, 164 Americans, not counting Brits, Nepalese, Germans, and everyone else from around the world, and the Israeli people. So that's just the American tally on there. And they are telling us that we need to give them another $100 million. By the way, I called this last week, both on this program and on my Sunday live stream. I told everyone that Secretary of State Blinken extended his stay in Israel. And I said, when he did that he was only doing this so that he could have a backdoor meeting with Iran and Hamas to try and figure out how to buy off the American hostages so Joe Biden looks like he's a good guy and doing his job. And I said at the time that we would probably see about 3 to 6 months between the hostages being released and money going into Hamas, probably as humanitarian aid. Well, the one thing I got wrong there is they didn't even bother to try and mask this purchase, this paying for prisoners. They did it right up front. They literally, the same week, Biden shows up and says, hey, here's $105 million, give us prisoners. And now we've got the first 2 Americans in good faith as part of the deal. Here's the first 2 Americans. We have another 164 to go. Give us the $105 million and we'll give you the rest of those hostages. Mind you, they're not giving up Israeli or German or Brits. In fact, this just made it worse for all of those countries. Now they have to pay to get their prisoners back, to give Hamas more rockets so that they can attack more people, because Hamas, the government of Palestine, has promised to genocide Israel and then kill Americans. And we have college students who are like, this is a great idea. Yes, let's help them. They went and had a riot in D.C., 300 people invading the offices of members of Congress to say, no, Hamas is great. We need to give them more help and money, as they are blackmailing us for our own people. This is insane. There's so many levels of that, but this is really upsetting to me.
Okay. I know that last numbers that I checked, over 300 individuals have been arrested from this quote unquote peaceful protest.
I thought it was 5 people arrested, 300 were in the protest. Did I read that wrong?
Police worked for hours to clear the crowd that had grown inside the Capitol building and arrested 308 people in total.
Okay, I misread it. Okay.
Detained protesters were lined up outside the building and shuttled to temporary holding area in the Capitol complex. Of the arrests, 305 were charged with illegally protesting inside the House office building. 3 were charged with assault on a law enforcement officer.
Insurrection.
Okay. that is the exact same things that they are trying to use to claim insurrection on January 6th, people. Okay. This is January 6th. I mean, you can't twist it any other way. And that's exactly what they are trying to do.
Yeah. It's exactly every part of what we saw the left demonize Americans for. Everything that they have said, oh, this is MAGA, this is evil, this is bad. Every single aspect disregarded law enforcement, broke into the building, illegally having a protest, went up and assaulted officers, all because they wanted to disrupt the operation of the government, its normal business and functions, because they had a feeling. I mean, this is actually worse than what we saw on January 6th. If you really go into the brass tacks of what was really being achieved here, and this was done by the left. And now the news media is like, oh, don't pay attention to it. It's not that big a deal.
Now, I want to back up just a little bit. Okay, and go back to the economy. Okay, one of the leading trends to tell whether the economy is healthy or not is U.S. housing starts.
Yeah, they're down.
Okay, yeah, they are down by quite a bit.
And foreclosures are up.
But now they will try to show you or claim that it's up. But if you actually dig into the numbers, and here I'm looking at a 5-year trend on U.S. housing starts. From 2019, if you follow that, you can see that it's pretty much trending up until just after slightly till April 2022. April 2022, when we started seeing inflation start rearing its really ugly head, you can see that the trend is drastically down.
That's about when inflation hit double digits.
Yeah.
Like on all metrics, energy, housing, food, all the metrics that really matter to an individual, they all hit double digits at about April 2022, all at the same time. They were all about in excess of about 11%. No matter how you want to look at the numbers from any source, they all hit at that point.
And I mean, you can see that this is a steady trend down.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, there is no other way of looking at that. If you look,
but don't move the chart.
There is no way to look at that.
Yeah, but don't move the chart. You know why they're saying that it's up and everything's better? Notice that little V just about a month or two ago.
Yeah, because they take and look at it like this.
Yeah. And now, we're up from the last month. Yeah, they're looking at, last month, we're up from last month. So we're up. Don't look at any other data. Stop looking, stop thinking.
Right. They don't want you to see the full picture. They want you to see a little part of it. And if you look at, and what I did was I looked at it year over year. And if you look at the 5-year trend, you can clearly see it.
Well, you don't even need to. You can look at it in the 3 months. You can look at 3 months or even 6 months.
Well, 6-month trend. Okay. Yeah, it was down and they are trying to claim that, it's recovering. Okay. But if you look at the data, like I said, go out to a 10-year deal and you can see that it is steadily down after a pretty significant rise over 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, these numbers don't lie. The economy is, even if you go from when Biden took office, which is from right here, January 2021, that trend is clearly down.
Yeah.
It was even for the first part until 2022. And then it's clearly down after that.
And if you were to average that out, you would get a net negative return.
Yeah.
From because we have gone that far down, it is a net negative. It's offset any positives that were lingering from recovery of 2020 of the pandemic. But I mean, we're exasperated, and we are exasperating this because of the spending, and yet we have mandatory spending for the Ukraine that most Americans don't want to keep spending for, which has no time. There is no expiration date on that. We're going to be funding that war for the rest of the next 10 years that it's going to be going on for.
Well,
and we're funding Hamas, which most people, thankfully, the majority of Americans do not support.
How many? I want. If we've had other countries that have done this, played both sides against each other, and we've called them out in the past, called them, said that they're breaking international law, this, that, and the other.
Depends on the aspects of it, but I mean, depending on how you're defining it.
And here we are doing that. We're doing that exact same thing. Okay. Now, I don't know if you knew this or not, but the EU and US are having a summit this coming up. When is the date on that?
September? What am I saying? November?
I'm trying to see when that is. I think it's sooner than that. But this doesn't actually say. But basically, it's saying that we need to unite, or they're supposed to stress unity amid the Israel, Hamas, and the Russian-Ukraine wars. Now, I'm waiting to see what type of unity they strive for in the Israel-Hamas deal. Are they going to try to be neutral, fund both sides, or what?
No. They're going to try and push the two-state theory to give Hamas its own state, to officially consider it a country of its own, and then to give massive funding, just like we are seeing right now, just like the Biden administration. They gave them $300 million for humanitarian aid, and now we're giving them another $100 million for quote-unquote humanitarian aid, and now they're going to use the rest of the world to give them humanitarian aid. And what you're going to see is that Hamas is going to continue to do what it has done, because its stated goal is the elimination of Israel and the United States. This is why Iran said that if Israel goes in and tries to pacify, if they try to stabilize, if they go into the West Bank, into Gaza, and try to confront Hamas directly to minimize that threat in the future, that Iran promised they're coming to America, not Israel. Iran's going to attack America if Israel were to try and defend itself. And we're giving money to Hamas, the people who started this entire problem. Doesn't make sense, folks.
No.
And we're buying hostages.
Yeah, before you guys go on, I am going to call it a night. My knees are killing me.
Yeah, you've been quiet tonight.
Yeah, I'm just in, like I said, I've been up since about 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock this morning, having a really bad couple of days with the pain. Spent a long time in the doctor's office today trying to figure out what the hell the next step is going to be, and I am just exhausted. I hate to be a party pooper, but I'm pooped, so I'm going to poop on the party, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Okay.
Hey, and everybody, listen. Check out the range report. We're putting up new videos every 3 days. Went this weekend. We spent 6 hours in the range, just continuously shooting new videos and new reviews. So check out the range report and subscribe, and share the damn videos. We need to start pumping up the numbers over there. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a great night. Love you guys.
You take care, Brink.
Definitely feel better.
I'll try.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it's me, but every single poll I see, we have all these colleges, all these students who are being taught in high school and college that Hamas are some kind of good guys, some kind of saints. They're oppressed, and they're genociders. They are supporting genocide. We were hearing the
but
Democrats
they're trying to reverse this onto Israel and claiming that Israel is the one committing genocide,
which isn't true. Israel's the only one that accepts the Palestinians. Egypt, you notice Egypt, what was the first thing Egypt did, which shares a border with the Gaza Strip?
Shut
the border down. They said no Palestinians can come in. Jordan didn't take any Palestinians. No one in the Middle East wanted and wants the Palestinians. They all say, screw it. We don't care about those people, except as it affects Israel, to say Israel's a bad guy. And here's ultimately, we saw Hamas attacked civilians. They attacked America indiscriminately. They didn't care if you were from Israel or the United States or Germany or Britain or Nepal. They attacked every human being, and babies, they killed babies, and they went and did this indiscriminately. That is terrorism 101. There is no way to redefine that, and you cannot justify that. And now they have taken Americans hostage. We know of 164. We have 2 in our hands because we are paying for them. What the hell is going on that we are seeing college students that are saying, that's a good thing? What is going to happen to our nation going forward? I think it was on last week. I posed this question. I think I brought it up here. If they're willing to cheer on and celebrate genocide, if they're willing to celebrate and fund through this humanitarian aid, supposed humanitarian aid, to support genocide and the murder of babies, what the hell is going to happen in America going forward? What are they going to do to you? I asked that last week. I have to ask it again as we continue to see them demand money out of my pocket, out of your pocket, to give to Hamas for no other reason than Hamas wants to continue to kill people, innocent civilians. I have problems with this.
Okay. Did you hear about the hospital that?
Yeah, the hospital
got blown up
by Hamas. The very same people who use human hostages and hide in hospitals and schools. Yeah,
okay.
I heard about it. And Rashida Tlaib was like, "Oh, it's it's not Hamas. It's the Israelis." No, it isn't.
Yeah, essentially, right after the blast happened, all these Democrats were coming out blasting Israel about this hospital being blown up. And come to find out, it was a friendly fire incident when a Hamas rocket went the wrong way.
Yeah. And this isn't new. Hamas does this all the time. And quite honestly, Israel, which has the opportunity every day. They have never done this. They have never attacked hospitals and schools. They put down leaflets. They tell people to evacuate. They don't attack hospitals full of injured people. They don't.
Thing is, and that's one thing about the Israelis, is they telegraph their attacks because they warn people to allow them and give them a chance to leave the area.
Yeah.
No other nation does that.
No, because everyone, we see that the colleges, the far left, want to support this, because in hating Israel and in attacking Israel, you're attacking the United States. This is our closest and only ally in the Middle East. To damage them is to damage the United States, both in terms of our credibility and our stability internationally. This is why they are doing this. And it doesn't matter that Hamas is more than happy to kill progressives and the left faster. They would kill conservatives slower than anyone else. Why? Because we're not the ones that say, well, you have to, in terms of the LGB, in terms of women's rights, and everything that the left stands for is despised.
It is.
By Hamas and Iran and these fanatics. And you're telling me, and they're the ones who are supporting the very same people that would want to stone them to death. They support and say, here is another rock, throw it at someone, throw it at the people we don't like.
And here's the other funny thing on this is we actually have communities here in the United States that are implementing Sharia law, which is the law that advocates for the stoning of LGBTQIA people, that advocates for the basically the oppression of women.
You're talking about Dearborn, Michigan. Let's call it, name the place for what it is. It's Dearborn, Michigan.
It's not just Dearborn, though.
No, it's not just them, but that's the main one.
Yeah, there are other places.
Islamberg in New York State. That's another one, which everyone forgets. Islamberg, New York State. Same thing as Dearborn, Michigan.
And we have people that are pushing to allow Sharia law to be enforced in the United States, but yet these are the same people that are pushing for Sharia law to be allowed in the United States are the same people that are also advocating for things that Sharia law is against. It makes absolutely zero sense.
And it makes zero sense that we are paying for this. And this is, we're exchanging money for prisoners. We have established now between Israel and now with Hamas, we have established for the world that the Biden-Harris administration will absolutely pay through the nose for Americans who have been taken prisoner, who have been captured and are held hostage. They've just made it very clear. I mean, Obama wasn't great about that, but Biden has now completely, absolutely ripped the veil off. There is no pretense. And this is exactly what we're doing. It's exactly what we called last week on the Sunday live stream, last week on the Friday roundtable. It is playing out exactly. And they're not even doing what normally would happen around the world, is at least give it 3 months for people to forget before you make the payoff. They're not even wasting time for that because he doesn't have time. He has an election coming up. He's got to get his poll numbers up.
Well, and if you think we are not going to be getting into this, we already are.
Yep.
Okay. The Pentagon is saying that it shot down multiple Yemenis missiles.
Yes.
That they believe were headed towards Israel.
Yes. And you know who those missiles came from? In Yemen? It wasn't the government of Yemen. It's the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. It is Iran's terrorist organization in Yemen, where they're fighting a civil war and have been for the last decade. It's the Iran-backed fanatics who have rockets just like Hezbollah, just like Hamas. They're the same people, just happen to be in Yemen, and they're firing Iranian rockets just like what we saw with Hamas. No one should be surprised by this.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we will end up having boots on the ground before everything's said and done. In Israel. I have no doubts about that. And you are also going to start seeing our presence in the Mediterranean, our naval presence in the Mediterranean increase.
Well, it is. Remember, you've heard me say this over the last 2 years. I have had a theory. It's not World War III. It's 3 regional wars simultaneously. I think I've explained that on this program. I think I've talked with you about it before. Matter of fact, I know I have over the last 2 years. And that's what we're seeing. European, well, that's Ukraine, Russia. Southeast Asia, China, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea, with North Korea helping China. That's happening. And then we have the Middle East, which is just a constant conflagration. And currently, this is part of it. And it's going to increase and continue to get worse. We're seeing with Iran through its various actors attacking Israel and the United States. And we are funding it.
Yeah,
the Biden administration is funding the attack against America.
Mm-hmm. Now, Huckabee Sanders made the news a lot this week.
Yeah.
One of the things that she made the news for is this.
What?
An executive order to eliminate woke anti-women words from state government and respect women.
Yes. Which I think is
and it goes on, whereas women are women, whereas XX chromosome is an XX chromosome, science is clear and real. There are things only women can do, like perform the miracle of birth, whereas government should reject language that ignores, undermines, and erases women, whereas government should celebrate gender distinctions between men and women and not erase them, and whereas it is policy of this administration to prohibit the use of woke anti-woman words for official state government business. Now, therefore, I, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, acting under the authority vested in me as the governor of the state of Arkansas, do hereby order. And she goes into a bunch of things that are no longer allowed in any government literature. Okay. Yeah. So they basically can't use pregnant people. Or pregnant person. They are supposed to use pregnant women or pregnant mom.
Yes.
Rather than chest feeding, they are to use breastfeeding.
Yes.
Rather than body fed or person fed, they are to use breastfed.
Yes.
Rather than human milk, they are to use breast milk.
Yes.
Rather than birthing person, they are to use birth mom.
How about just mom?
Mm-hmm. Rather than laboring person, use birth mom.
Or
rather than
mom.
menstruating person or menstruating people, use woman or women. Rather than birth giver, use woman.
Or mom.
And I don't even know how to pronounce the last two.
Because they're not able to be pronounced. They're not words.
Okay, use woman.
It's like Latinx, which is insulting. It's just insulting.
Okay, so that's one of the things. Another thing that she did this week was this.
A man and a woman. I love that. Mike, you're funny. You're funny, Mike.
So the Alabama Senate passed a revised bill on foreign land ownership. Okay. Originally, I guess it was worded that no Chinese citizens were, it was a ban on all Chinese citizens from owning land in the state. They
I can live with that.
reworded it to specifically restrict
Any foreigner?
Chinese government officials, as well as officials in Iran, North Korea, and Russia, from acquiring land in Alabama. Okay.
Why not just say any foreign nation, any citizen of a nation outside of the United States can't buy United States land? It should be that simple. This shouldn't be that hard to figure out.
Mhm.
Why are we
Now-
selling them our land?
They are actually defining, they're actually saying that it is banned on foreign principles of specifically named countries. Okay, and what they are defining a foreign principle is defined as a government or official of a country of concern, a political party or member, an entity with a principal place of business in another country of concern, or country or government identified on a sanctions list by the United States Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control. So, in other words, if you are on the sanctions list, you are not allowed to own land in Alabama. Or if you are a citizen of a country that is on the sanction list, is how it needs to be said, actually.
I don't understand why. I know we've done it with Japan in the past. We've done it, and the argument from the 90s, which was, why are we selling our land to Japan? Because back in the 90s, for those who are too young to know this, we had a similar problem of, well, we had Japanese businesses and individuals and the government of Japan buying up a lot of land, especially on the west coast of America. And there was a big argument at the time saying, why are we letting them buy our land? Never really got resolved. What stopped that was the Japanese economy basically started to fail, and so they couldn't afford to keep buying the land, which then led to a slump in sales, and then we get into economics. But so this isn't a new argument. The argument is the same argument from the 90s, which says, why are we selling these foreign governments, these foreign nations, these foreign individuals our land? If anyone's buying the land, let it be Americans. Why would we sell it to someone else? I have never heard a good answer for that. Not ever.
No, well, of course, House Democrats, they had to chime in on this.
I'm sure they love the idea.
Oh, yeah, they do. U.S. lawmakers seek to preempt state-level bans on foreigners buying property.
And can they give us, I haven't read the article, but I'm already going to assume, I'm just going by the general trend of Democrat politics. Let me guess that in this article, that not once from The Intercept, which is a far left meaning organization, they lean all the way over backwards on the left. Let me guess that not once do they justify, why are we selling land to foreigners? Period. Is there any reason why we should be doing this? Is there any benefit to America? Because I believe the answer is no. Am I wrong, Mike?
No.
They don't justify, they don't provide any justification?
No. Well, actually, what they're claiming is these bills are 21st century versions of the alien land laws.
So they're saying it's racist.
Mm-hmm.
It's racist to have a border. It's racist to allow your citizens to buy land in your country. Open border. Everyone should be able to buy your land. Okay.
referring to a series of proposed laws a century ago banning foreign ownership. These laws are being passed in southern states with relatively minimal national attention. It could be a slippery slope towards bringing more discrimination based upon people's ethnic identity.
No, I'm sorry. That
I
is an excuse. Go ahead.
I have to say, okay, if somebody is a citizen of the United States, regardless of their national origin,
Mm-hmm.
they should be able to own property anywhere in the United States.
Yes.
And that would be covered under the 14th Amendment
Yes.
of the Constitution. Now, however, foreign nationals are not covered. And I don't believe that foreign nationals should be able to own property in the United States. Period.
Yeah.
I don't care what country they come from. They should not be able to buy up United States property. Okay. And I will almost guarantee that if we go into other countries and check out their laws, we will find similar laws in a lot of other first world countries.
The difference there, obviously they make a lot of concessions to like billionaires. If you're Gates or Epstein or Oprah, they make some allowances there for the mega rich and mega celebrity. But other than that, if you look at most countries, the way they answer this is they price it for foreigners outside the realm of any common purchaser. It can only be purchased by a government or someone who's like an Oprah, someone who's like a Bill Gates. Regular people can't afford it. And that's their loophole in many of these countries to not have to deal with the question. It's just, sure, you could buy it. You just can't afford it. You can't afford the fees and the cost and everything that's being attached to it. We don't do the same thing. I mean, we're not even playing on the same game. If we're playing the same game, that would be one thing. But we're not even doing that. We're literally, the Democrats are just saying, yeah, just give everything away. They want to give 4-star hotels to illegal aliens. They want to give money to Hamas. They want to bankrupt this country, and they want to give the land to someone else. And they can't give you a good reason other than, well, if you don't agree, you're a racist. That's a miserable answer. That's a useless answer. You did not answer the question of why I should do this. That's not a reason.
Okay. Well, here, let's do a quick Google search. Okay. And let me pull this up. So the United States is not unique in this. Come on, share. There we go. Okay. Austria. To buy property in Austria, you must meet one of the following requirements: have citizenship of a country of the European Union, have an Austrian residence permit, to buy in the name of the legal entity registered in the EU, or obtain a permit from local authorities at the Land Commission.
No, it's not or, it's and.
Yeah.
Well,
No, you must meet one.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is saying or. Okay, I misread that.
Okay. There are exceptions too. It all depends on the characteristics of the particular object.
Are you
Okay,
Oprah?
Hungary. Foreigners are required to obtain permission from local authorities to purchase property. It is not required if the purchase is made by the company, i.e., legal entity. Restrictions: foreigners are forbidden to buy in Hungary military and strategic objects, national monuments, objects located in reserves, buying on the territory of resorts, Baltan and resort or HEVIS will be under question. The authorities may not give permission. Vietnam. Foreigners who've invested in the Vietnamese economy or hold executive positions in a company operating in the country. Foreigners whose contribution has been recognized by the president and prime minister. Foreigners with higher education. Greece restrictions: foreigners who are not citizens of the EU and the European Economic Area (EEA) are not allowed to buy real estate in Greece near military bases or national boundaries. In particular, some regions in North Greece, Crete, Rhodes, the East Aegean Islands, or the Dodecanese archipelago.
Yeah,
I'm having a hard time talking.
That's right. But what you're noting in the same thing is we see consistently that the people who are allowed to do so overwhelmingly are or either companies or mega wealthy individuals, usually, which would isolate celebrities or billionaires, ultra successful individuals. We're talking about the top 0.5% of the world. There are very few people who can actually afford the licenses, the fees, the registrations, the things that they are saying. And most countries do this on purpose. And they always say there are exceptions because there's always their favorite celebrity or something, or their favorite business that they want in. But they do this so as to, without insulting anyone, without saying you're a peasant and we don't want you, or your belief system, your ideology does not match our homogenous nation, stay out. Instead, they say, okay, we're going to make it almost impossible for you to make it over the hurdle. As opposed to here in the United States, rather than protecting national security, rather than worrying about a homogenous society that has similar or the same beliefs and is willing to work with each other, we're willing to sell off any part. You literally could be from Iran and you can buy up a bunch of land in the middle of America and you can establish a town like Islamberg, like Dearborn, Michigan, and say, guess what? Here's a bunch of Sharia law. We hate everyone else and we will stone you for being gay. This is what they are enabling because they want to destroy America. It just seems so obvious that this is what we're seeing the progressives do over and over again. And I've not heard an argument from them that says, no, that's not really the end goal. I have not heard that, not once.
Yeah. And well, Denmark is one of those quote unquote democratic socialist countries that we are supposed to emulate.
But they're not. According to Denmark itself, they're
Right.
not socialists.
Okay. In Denmark, a foreigner may buy property in Denmark only for their main place of residence or business. And the conditions, but only if he meets one of the requirements. Has previously lived in Denmark for at least 5 years. Is a citizen of the EU and works in Denmark. Is a citizen of a non-EU country with a valid permit to stay or do business in Denmark. If you don't meet one of those requirements, you cannot own property in Denmark. Canada, since January 1st, 2023, foreigners have banned buying real estate in Canada. There are exceptions to buy a home in Canada. Foreigners who have a work permit in Canada, however, you can buy no more than one residential property. Buy vacant land for the purpose of residential or mixed development. Buy homes for the purpose of development. This also applies to public companies established in Canada but controlled by foreigners. Okay, so pretty much every country have these restrictions. Why the United States is trying to get rid of them doesn't make sense.
It makes sense if you also realize that 127 out of 146, 149 nations in the world have walls and have borders. Right. And these very same progressives that the Intercept is trying to laud and trying to convince people, no, we should be more like these people. They're the same ones that are in the face of the rest of the world saying, no, we have borders, we have walls. They're saying, no, we don't need borders and walls, unless it's to protect Martha's Vineyard, Chuck Schumer's house, Nancy Pelosi's house. Unless it's for the elites, well, then they get walls. You, peasant, moron, you get to live in open borders, and here come the illegal aliens, and you're going to pay for it. And they're going to use that money that we're paying them to buy our land and make our country less cohesive, less coherent, and to break apart our unity as a nation. It's just aggravating. It really is.
Now, I wish I would have brought this up before. We got a lot of stuff, folks. And I know we're going through this stuff really fast, but this week it's been a whirlwind. It absolutely has. And this next thing that I'm bringing up, I wish Frank would have actually still been here for this.
So it's not Hochul being in Israel for no apparent reason, along with Governor Newsom doing essentially the same thing that Eric Adams did in South America, which is waste taxpayer money for no reason. No, this is something else. Okay.
So Missouri passed a law that would prevent any Missouri law enforcement official from working with the federal government to enforce certain gun laws. Okay, the Supreme Court has literally said that it will not allow Missouri to reinstate that law after it was struck down by a lower court. The justices on Friday sided with the Biden administration in denying the Republican-led state's emergency application to put the law back into effect while legal challenge proceeds in the lower court. Clarence Thomas publicly dissented, and two of his fellow conservatives who voted to deny Missouri's request said they believe private parties can still enforce the law. The case would ultimately return to the high court on merits. Could ultimately return to the high court on merits. Missouri passed the Second Amendment Preservation Act in June of 2021, declaring that limitations on gun transfers and firearm registrations, among others, are unconstitutional. Police, as well as other state and local employees, are barred from enforcing provisions the law deems invalid. Violations could carry a $5,000 or $50,000 civil fine. The Biden administration last year sued over Missouri's law, arguing it was unconstitutional, and a federal district judge agreed in March. But the law remained in effect until late last month, when the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, in a single sentence order, denied Missouri's request for a stay as their appeal proceeds. This gets back again to what I was talking about earlier, where when the constitutionality of a law is in question, that the courts should err on the side of that is against the federal government.
Right. Err inside of individual rights and freedoms first in every case.
Right. Okay. Individual rights should be first and foremost, and then state rights, and then federal rights. That's the way it should progress. And whenever a law that is challenging constitutionality of federal law, it should be upheld, not upheld. There should be injunctions put in place to prevent federal encroachment until the law proceeds through the court system to its final determination. Now, I imagine that the argument that the Biden administration is trying to utilize in this is the supremacy clause of the Constitution.
Because of public safety?
No, that all laws essentially what they are trying to claim is that all laws passed by the United States government are
hierarchy. So they're
right,
have the highest hierarchy and
right,
priority because they come from the federal
right,
government, which overwrites state and local.
right, right.
Okay.
Okay, and that's not the case. The supremacy clause, if you read it in full, not just part of it, but in full, the supremacy clause literally says that all laws passed by the United States, and I'm paraphrasing this, in accordance with the United States Constitution, are to be supreme law of the land. They try to claim that every law passed by the United States is supreme law.
No.
Okay, and actually, I will bring it up here real quick.
No, I understand their reasoning. It's just not accurate.
No, it's not accurate.
Not historically and not in courtrooms. It's not accurate at all. But if you want to overreach the power of government, if you want to have for the progressive movement, which represents about 3%, well, 7% of the Democratic Party, about 3% of the nation, if you want to install laws based on your feelings and desires, and you cannot get that passed in a state. Hell, they have trouble passing the progressive ideology in New York State. Hell, or California. So it's not going to fly in Kentucky or Iowa. So the only way they can get around that is to claim supremacy and have the Biden-Harris administration try and install it under edict of either Congress or executive order or just a regulation, which isn't law, but they use it the same as law to try and force it onto states that otherwise would never, like in Missouri, would never agree to this.
So here's the particular, this is in Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Okay, the phrase which shall be made in pursuance thereof is the phrase that they like to exclude whenever they claim the supremacy clause.
Mm-hmm.
Any law that a state claims to be unconstitutional, that they refuse to enforce, is not made in pursuance of the Constitution. Okay, until it is adjudicated that it is actually constitutional, then the state has the authority to withhold enforcement of any law they deem unconstitutional.
Right.
Okay.
It should be straightforward.
Right. And I don't agree that the Biden administration will win on this case if it does proceed up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Basically on those grounds. However, actually there is a chance they might, because the court could come back and say that the state of Missouri must cite a specific law that they deem unconstitutional.
They can't blanket all of them and just
right
and go each and every specific legislation. I could see them saying that, but that wouldn't necessarily be in favor. They're not overturning.
Mm-mm.
They would be throwing it back and say, no, work on this. Basically bringing it back to the lower courts, essentially.
Well, they basically be throwing it back to the state legislature and say, hey,
Rewrite this.
your law as written won't fly.
Right.
But if you cite specific laws that you deem as unconstitutional, then yeah, it could fly.
Yeah, kind of the exact opposite of what we're seeing with New York State with Kathy Hochul, where we're seeing the Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional, and she turned around and said, okay, so let me get even more unconstitutional in terms of trying to restrict the Second Amendment rights of American citizens, using the same core ideology, public health, public safety. I have the right to do this. No, you don't. You still don't. You still don't have any facts to back this up. You still don't have that power or that right. You still are in violation of the Supreme Court. But now we got to go back to the courts. And she knows she bought herself some more time. That's essentially it. So we're seeing the exact opposite of Missouri in New York, essentially.
Yes. And yes, Jan, you are correct. Same with state law, that a sheriff can refuse to enforce a particular law that is passed by the state that the sheriff believes is contrary to either the state constitution or the federal constitution.
Right. And we're seeing that in New Mexico. We saw that in New York State. All the sheriffs said that they would not follow the New York SAFE Act. They refused to enforce that. We've had several who have said that they will not enforce the red flag laws. We saw it in
Oregon with 1639, Initiative 1639, in Oregon, or in Washington, not Oregon. And we've seen it in other states as well. In fact, there are a lot of county governments in Illinois that refuse to pass or enforce many gun laws that were enacted by the state of Illinois as well. So it's not just here. We're seeing it across the nation.
Yeah. It is amazing the way that we see the mental gymnastics that the progressive movement through the Democratic Party have to go through to try and justify and to manipulate law as it exists, ideology as it exists, to try and force onto people their ideology, their feelings, and their desires when everyone rejects it and it is patently unconstitutional. It is it's so oppressive. It's so authoritarian. And yet we see so much of the news media going, yeah, that's great. It's fantastic. Do it again. It's terrifying to me. It really is.
Yeah. Now we've talked about open borders on this show a lot. Europe, or actually the European Union, has just come up with some new requirements of people traveling from the United States. Have you heard about this, Michael?
No.
Okay. Americans who want to travel to Europe will have to register online to enter the continent starting in 2025. U.S. travelers will need prior authorization for travel to the European Union countries beginning in the spring of 2025, EU officials said Friday. The new requirements for travel will also mean that U.S. travelers arriving in Europe will no longer get passport stamps. Instead, their faces and fingerprints will be scanned and logged into a new digital registration system beginning next fall.
So it's a global database.
Exactly.
They're building a global database, and you have to be on the approved list, which is social credit. It's a social credit database.
Yep.
You're not good enough to enter my nation. You can't come in.
The changes, which have been delayed numerous times, are part of a global movement toward biometric screening at border crossings.
Yeah.
Travelers won't need to apply for advance permission to visit until well after the surge of international visitors taking in the Paris Olympics next July and August.
It is literally putting together a social credit global database. Are you good enough to get into my country? Do you follow the ideology enough to be allowed in? It is horrendous. My God, that is oppressive. We're talking Orwell levels of oppressiveness.
Well, electronic privacy advocates warn that travelers will give up privacy in addition to passport stamps. Face and fingerprint data will be stored in databases maintained by other governments, which digital privacy organizations say could ultimately lead to increased surveillance.
It'll lead to identity theft on a global level. Look at this. Governments are horrible at being able to protect secrets and data information. How many times have we seen data leaks of all kinds of private information coming directly from the government? The government, I don't care which government you want to pick, they're always behind the private industry. They're behind hackers. Hackers break into any government. Pick your government. They break into government databases and servers on a regular basis. And you're telling me you're going to put a global database of everyone's face and name and biometrics, and you expect that there's not going, you can't even protect the stuff you have now. And you're telling me that no hacker, no criminal organization, no rogue government's going to break into that and change some of the data. And let's go all the way. Let's take this to the furthest end. So Iran isn't going to put together a team of dedicated hackers to break into the EU servers to insert a couple of their terrorist cell members from the IRGC to put them into the database as approved then rather than disapproved, so that when they show up in Paris or wherever and their face gets registered, their fingerprints get scanned, and they say, oh, you're not on the international terrorist list. We're not even going to bother checking. Your face made it through. You're clear. Meanwhile, if anyone decides to actually type in this terrorist name, they'll go, oh, look, a known terrorist. We shouldn't let them into our country. Too late. Their face let them in. This is the kind of stupidity and loopholes that if I can figure that out in 30 seconds about hearing this story, tells you why this is absolutely something we cannot do.
Well, I agree. And I agree that there are so many things that lend to not just those scenarios that you claim, but there are so many ways that government actors can abuse these resources.
Yeah, but I mean, this only takes 30 seconds of thought. It literally, I just came up with a horror scenario. This is a horror scenario, worst case, which would enable the ability to have 9/11s or what we're seeing in Israel happen anywhere in the world, or the kind of conflicts and constant terror attacks that we see in France already, that are already occurring on a regular basis. Like they just had a teacher stabbed to death because of the International Day for Jihad. And so we're already seeing this happen. And I'm giving you that's not even the worst case scenario I could think of. Yeah. It's just the first one I thought of in 30 seconds. And they're trying to convince us, well, this is going to be good for you. No, I'm not a Chinese citizen. I don't live in China. I'm not part of the CCP. No, this is horrendous.
I can't see really any way this is good. Okay. They will try to push this as this is going to be a convenience. And there are several airlines that are already doing this. They're using facial recognition software to scan people instead of giving them boarding passes. And that's not a good thing, folks. Yeah,
No.
you don't have to carry a piece of paper. Okay, you get to just walk on your flight. It's not a good thing.
Are
It
we so lazy
it
that
is.
a piece of paper is too much to carry?
Well, hell, you don't even have to carry a piece of paper anymore. It's on your damn phone.
Well, yeah, there's that problem too. Same problem. Same ridiculous idiocy. I don't like that either.
Okay, I. When are we going to learn? I mean, you portrayed a very dark scenario that you came up with in 30 seconds. In my just little bit of thinking on this, okay, I can see so many government abuses of this.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing that comes to mind, honestly, is the actual peaceful protesters that did not go into the Capitol building, that were on the in the mall
Mhm.
at the Capitol, um, facial recognition, every one of them documented could be documented as quote unquote domestic terrorists.
300,000 people arrested and thrown into jail because you were sitting on the grass and didn't even know what was going on.
Right.
Yeah. Same concept. Yep.
Okay. That's just one of many abuses that I could see coming out of this.
Or wait a minute, we're talking about overseas. So you want to get onto a plane because of a business trip, your job has sent you overseas because it's the deal of the century. It's your small business is finally blowing up. You got to travel overseas to make the deal, either to seal the deal, sign the deal, whatever it may be. You got to go onto a plane to go overseas to do this. It's part of your business. It's going to make and break your life, your business, your life, your family, everything. And you get there and you show up, and first thing they do is, oh, your face. Oh, by the way, you showed up somewhere that the government of this foreign country don't like. We don't like your face. Your face is associated with something else that they don't like. You can't go. Screw you. You just lost your business.
Right.
And this is what we're talking about. That country's government says, I don't like where your face has been.
Yep.
And so you get punished for that.
Yeah.
That is terrifying. And that's updated digitally. So again, there could be someone, I don't know, let's say it's happening with America, and there's an IRS agent who just doesn't happen to like Republicans, kind of like what we saw with Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner doesn't like Republicans, just like in the Obama administration. So she goes into the database of all the faces and starts typing in all of the people who happen to be in conservative organizations, like, I don't know, charities that help people that tend to be right leaning. And God forbid, she's going to go in there and she's going to take all of those people and she's going to put them on a list because she doesn't like their faces, what they're connected to. You donated to an organization that helped the homeless by giving them jobs, not by giving them housing that's going to be paid for by taxes, not by giving them food endlessly without giving them the opportunity to get out of the streets. No.
You promoted a capitalist program instead of a socialist program.
And therefore, you are not a good person. And I'm going to block you from traveling overseas or outside the country or a dozen other different things. That's what this leads
Or
to.
boarding a train or boarding a bus, because that's the thing. Okay. They are trying to utilize this for quote unquote international travel. But it won't be long, folks, until this is put into subway stations, bus stations, train stations, and any other means. Taxi cabs, Ubers. I mean, the list goes on. Okay. And once you're flagged, getting unflagged is going to be impossible.
Well, that's like trying to get off of the U.S. terrorist watch list, getting off of the NICS database for someone with firearms, getting off the red flag list that states have. There's nothing, and there is no documentation on how you get removed from any of those lists.
No.
The terrorist watch list, there's no information, and we've seen senators.
And there is no appeal process.
No, you're on the list, and then
Once
you're just on the
you're
list.
on the list. There is no chance for appeal.
Yeah, you won't even know you're on the list until you try to do something that they then say you're denied.
Yeah.
This is why it's terrifying. All right. It's 2 hours, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I need to jump to take care of my dog real quick.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I mean, I've got other things that we could go into,
Oh,
but
so do I, but
we're just out of time, folks.
Yeah.
And we go over this every week. If we want things to change, we have to start getting involved. We are here every week, every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Folks, get involved. One of the ways that you can get involved is by joining the Liberty First Foundation, becoming a paid supporter of the Liberty First Foundation. You can do that through our membership drive that we're running right now. The address is up on the screen. Folks, if you don't want to get involved, you don't want your voice out there, let us be your voice. If you agree with what we're telling, what we're saying, and so forth, support us so we can reach more people. Support us so we can actually start challenging some of these laws. We've got the strategies in place. We need the funding to be able to fight for you. And that's what we're here for. We can't do it without you.
Yep.
Okay. If you don't want to become a member, another way that you can support us is, hey, drink coffee, tea, buy some coffee or tea. Okay, we've got that for sale. I will get the address of that so we can start displaying that when we do this. But folks, we got some great stuff. Okay. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for everybody in the comment section. Folks, start inviting people. Okay. We are going to be starting up some giveaways. Frank's working some deals out now. He's actually getting some stuff for reviews. As he said, he is back on the range and he's doing reviews and so forth again. And one of the things that we've been discussing is as we review various products and various items, we are going to start giving them away to our members. Okay. But in order to be eligible, you must first be a member of the Liberty First Foundation, and second, be present when we are doing those giveaways. So if you want a chance at getting stuff, show up for our shows. Be here, be in the audience. And one last thing, if you can't do anything else, if you can't become a member, if you can't buy coffee, then one thing that you can do to help us spread the word is like, share, comment, and subscribe. Okay, that helps us also get the word out. Okay, the more comments, the more likes, the more shares that we have of these episodes, that means more people that are seeing it. It gets around the shadow bans. It gets around the Facebook algorithms, the YouTube algorithms, because it forces these to go through. We may not be able to do it organically through their algorithms, but we can do it if we stick together and if we take and do the like and the shares. With that, I'm going to say good night. We will see you next Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.